and welcome to the Fossil Fuel Free Coast to Coast to Coast 2017. I'm Steve Muir. I'm on the left there with Meg Christie on the tandem. We've got Alistair, who was going to be on a tandem with Annette, but she got bronchitis just before we left, so she had to pull out, so Alistair towed her kayak up by himself. And then we have Chris and Emily, who this year had a Canadian canoe which they were putting their tandem and kayak trolley in for the Waimakariri Gorge rather than doing a shuttle around on the tandem. The first day was Saturday the 18th of February. We met at West Melton and began biking across to Springfield, light easterly wind behind us, which was really nice, and rising a surprising amount of altitude over the plains, about 300 metres to Springfield. We camped the night at some friend's house. The second day is a pretty big day, biking from Springfield up to Beely Spur. There's about 1,300 metres of ascent and 1,000 metres of descent. There's lots of up and down through the Porter's Pass, which is great fun and makes for really interesting riding through some beautiful scenery, but it does take a bit of work. 72 kilometres of distance. In order to get into this day, we slept until 7:45 and weren't really on the road till 10 o'clock, which was quite a pleasant way to start the day. The journey across to Porter's Pass, again all fairly smooth, and riding up Porter's Pass went pretty well. Steve and Meg had to get off at the very steep section at the top because the 40-year-old tandem didn't quite have enough gears, but we're quite happy to do a bit of walking and give our cycling legs a bit of a rest. We got to Lake Pearson, which was a lovely lake, and got one of the kayaks off and had a nice kayak around there. The 40-year-old tandem that Steve and Meg were on was also starting to make some very odd noises in the back cluster on the rear wheel, so he had a look at that and discovered, surprisingly, the cone that held the cluster on, which had some bearings underneath it, had come loose and all the bearings had fallen out, so the whole cluster was wobbling from side to side. It's quite an odd design of cluster, haven't seen it before, but we managed to tighten it up a little and have it limping along, although the gear changing was being very frustrating. It resulted in a few stops to put the chain back on because it was flicking from side to side and would throw itself off rather easily. So a bit frustrating, but it did result in some more rest stops than we would have had otherwise. The journey across the Waimakariri Bluffs went without incident, quite a steep, narrow section of road, but no problems. And we made it to Beely Spur in a reasonably good time. It was about 8 hours of riding and a very beautiful journey. The idea of the fossil fuel free coast to coast to coast is to show that you can do something about climate change. There seems to be a lot of talk about climate change and the huge consequences it's going to have for us now and for our future generations. But for all the talk, there seems to be little real willingness to change our lifestyles to actually reduce our carbon emissions. Transport, it seems to me, is likely one of our biggest causes of emissions, particularly that I have personal control over. And it's felt great for me personally to drastically cut my car use around town over quite a few years, and hence the emissions that I'm responsible for. I make bike trailers and cargo bikes and kayak trolleys, so I do almost all of my load carrying by pedal power. Holidays, though, have been a different story. I usually find myself jumping into the car with all my gear that I need and burning up carbon to go on holidays. So I've thought about it quite a lot over the years, how to do enjoyable holidays by bicycle. The other thing I've seen a bit of is all those very fit athletes going out doing multi-sport training, and they're driving their kayaks down to the waterway. It makes a lot more sense to bike the kayaks down there and get double the training and make a bit of an impact on their carbon emissions. So that's the main motivation behind the fossil fuel free coast to coast to coast. Have a great holiday and do some epic multi-sport, but try not to burn any. Day 3 was our journey from Beely Spur through to Otira. We all cycled together to Graney's Shelter, where the old tandem got put on the kayak trolley, and Chris and Emily biked all of our gear through to Otira. Meanwhile, Steve, Chris and Alistair walked the Minga Deception from east to west and had really good conditions for doing that. The river levels were quite reasonable, and we had a really enjoyable walk. Meg even took a dip in the Minga River on the way over to cool off, and enjoyed our lovely walks. The weather began to close in a bit towards the west coast side with a light bit of drizzle. The only major incident was when Steve leaned on a rock to lower himself down a riverbank, and the rock collapsed. It's quite a large boulder, but he had a small fall with a rock on his hip and got a bit of a bruise there, but nothing serious. We got to the footbridge where Chris and Emily had left our bikes and biked back the 6 kilometres to Otira, and had a really good day. Chris and Emily experienced some of the very few dodgy overtaking manoeuvres that were done throughout our journey. There's a couple of people, including a bus, overtook where there was clearly no room in oncoming traffic and forced the oncoming traffic to pull over at the side of the road. Fortunately, there was no problems for the cyclists, but it does show that sometimes you have to be a wee bit patient when you're driving. It took about 9 hours to get through the Minga Deception valleys, so fairly leisurely pace, stopping to enjoy the scenery. On day 4 we had the journey from Otira out to Kamara Beach and returning, cycling all the way. The conditions were really good, a bit claggy to start with, but find up very nicely. Total distance of about 133 kilometres there and back. We had some good breaks along the way to fix a puncture, and at Kamara Beach, and buying lunch in Kamara on the way back, so reasonably well paced journey, and felt like we were flying along with the downhills and a bit of a tailwind picking up on the way back, which helped us a lot. The gear changing on the tandem was being pretty frustrating, so we decided that we might have to do something about that when we got back to Otira.
So what was that you're just saying then, Chris?
I wasn't expecting to feel this sense of kind of completion.
Yes.
Like getting here and feeling the sea on my feet and looking out towards Australia, I feel like that we've done it. We've made it from the coast to the coast.
It's quite a good sense of achievement, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have to agree, I wasn't here last year because I didn't make it, but yeah, very satisfying getting this far.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't the same last year because we were thinking of you, Steve, not
Yep.
being able to be here with us, and this year it's much better.
It is good. That's right, and that with bronchitis.
Yeah, we'll think about it.
Any other comments people would like to make? Alistair, profound words?
That'll be good to make it all the way there this time. Back again.
That's right. No fossil fuel so far. A few dodgy gear things happening on the tandem, so anything could happen yet. But it's looking good. Halfway.
Halfway.
Yeah, so here's the cluster here, see that lock ring, so that's slopping around like that and going up and down, so that's what it was doing while I was trying to change gear along the way, which is, yeah, made it quite difficult, but it did, it's quite remarkable how well we did considering how much slop is in that thing. We still managed to change a few gears and get up a reasonable speed, and it didn't fall out completely, which is good. Yes, this is the Beaumont's excellent garage, and what I'm particularly interested in is old bicycles over there, 10 speeds with potentially a 5-speed cluster hub on the back, buried in there. On day 5 it was Chris and Emily's turn to do the run through the Deception Minga Valleys. Steve and Meg did the tandem shuttle, dropping them down to the footbridge in the morning, and they began their journey. They made really good time getting through in 6 hours compared to Steve, Meg and Alistair, who took a more leisurely pace, taking 9 hours to go through. It went pretty well, although Chris did get pretty sore knees at the Goat Pass hut, and so had to take it a little more quietly on the way down, and also got a pretty chafed back from his backpack rubbing, which is quite unusual. But Emily kindly took his backpack and relieved that, and he was limping a bit when he got back to the batch. Meanwhile, Steve, Meg and Alistair took the gear back up the Otera Viaduct and had a pretty good journey up there, slow and sure. Steve was walking up the hill and was about the same pace as the cyclists. Had a nice morning tea at Arthur's Pass and then continued on through to the Batch, dropping Chris and Emily's tandem at Granny's Shelter on the way.
I'm walking up here. I hear a big truck coming up behind me. I have to say, Alistair biking up there is not making much progress against my walking pace. We're about the same. I can't quite catch him, but anyway, it's not a lot slower, that's for sure. There are plenty of towing vehicles on this road, that's for sure. How was the hill there, Alistair?
It was steep. I was in bottom gear and I would have gone for another couple of gears lower, thank you very much, but we got there in the end.
Yep, oh, well, your next gear lower of course is walking. That wasn't a lot slower than you, but you're doing well.
I don't think you're any slower than I was. Because you gave me a bit of a head start and then you almost caught up.
Yeah, and stopped for some videoing.
Walking wasn't much slower.
No, both are good options. I'm resting my biking legs for later, but
fair enough.
Yep, very well done. Right, so tell us about it. We're recording. How was it?
We did really well getting up to the saddle, and then after that my knees fell apart and my ankles hurt and my back hurt, and Emily carried me the rest of the way.
Oh, Emily, you're a hero. Well, you made an amazing time. I mean, what's it now?
2:30 or?
2:30, so that's 8:30 to 2:30.
Yeah. 6 hours.
6 hours, impressive.
Very good. No, pretty pleased with that, but no, they're beautiful up there. I mean,
it was really beautiful.
And the Hoheria flowers and just gorgeous and just best weather, and the river was so low, we went across that bit where we got turned around like,
I know. Is that all? And you could see the bottom?
Yeah. No, it was awesome.
Hey, well, good effort.
But I'm curious about how you guys went.
Why we took so long, you mean?
No.
9 hours.
Did the tyre work?
Oh yeah, the tyre worked fine, yeah, no blowouts. Yep, that was good.
Day 6 was the much anticipated kayaking section of the journey, so we left Beely Spur with our kayaks in tow and set off for the Mount White Bridge, where we began the job of packing down the Canadian canoe with the kayak trolley inside it and the tandem down the bottom, and everything seemed to fit in pretty well and got strapped down very securely. And we began our journey. We had Sam join us in the third kayak that Alistair had been towing, and he wasn't as used to that kayak as he has to other kayaks, so managed to fall out a few times. He also got a dodgy can of creamed rice that he ate for lunch and began to make him feel quite queasy, so he was a bit lacking in energy and ended up getting out at Woodstock and getting picked up in a car, so a bit of fossil fuels being used there. The rest of the team made it quite happily through without much fossil fuels. The Canadian canoe handled pretty well through the rapids. A couple of times it got a splash over the bow and had to get bailed out, but most of the rapids it went through fine, keeping quite dry. The weather was pretty good, slightly overcast to start with, but then finding up beautifully through the gorge, some fairly strong gusty headwinds at time to contend with, but generally pretty good conditions. Meg and Alistair cycled from Mount White Bridge around the roads with the remaining bikes and kayak trolleys, having an enjoyable bike ride, slight headwind, and made it to Springfield in reasonably good time. Enjoyed an afternoon tea there before going to the Waimak Gorge Bridge, where they had to wait for over an hour for the kayakers to turn up. And that's about 9 hours to get through the gorge, so a little longer than we anticipated, but we managed to load all of the kayaks back on to the trailers and continued to a friend's place in Oxford, staying with Ian and Beth, and got some very yummy vegetables to cook up for dinner in a great stir fry. We first attempted this in 2016, but got hit by a weather bomb, a funeral of a close relative, and a spouse's operation on their hip, so ended up not being able to do the whole Minga Deception journey due to flooded rivers, and managed to get some of the group to the west coast and back fossil fuel free. But this year it's been more satisfying, having better weather conditions. We were able to do 5 of us all to the west coast and back without burning any fossil fuels at all.
Right, we're rolling. Meg, how's the bike ride? Should we start with that?
Well, happily we had a really uneventful bike ride. We got a little bit of a headwind at one stage, and the roadworks on the Craigieburn cutting were interesting, but we both managed to stay on the whole ride up there.
Yep, not too hard. Or was it pretty hard work? Hard work, right?
It's always
No doubt
hard.
about that.
It's never not hard.
Yep. Okay, how did you find it, Alistair?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, we swapped trailers at one stage because we felt we should equalise the lengths because I had the short trailer on the short bike.
Right.
So the long trailer on the short bike and vice versa.
Uh-huh. Good, good.
Did that even us up at all?
I think so, yeah.
So you're about to say something there, Meg?
Oh, I think the most interesting part of our trip was meeting the man doing the New Zealand's longest walk. He had made like a covered wagon trailer.
Oh wow.
That he had two dogs in and he slept in. They had little legs that went, had wheels on them obviously, and they had legs that made a little raised platform for sleeping on.
Wow.
And he had made it himself.
Intriguing.
Yeah, and he was pulling it
Yep.
around New Zealand. He'd been going 7 weeks. And raising awareness of animal cruelty.
Right.
And he had two very happy dogs.
They weren't being
They
treated
were
cruelly.
saying, no.
Excellent, good to hear.
Oh, that's one. We both jumped in here and it was wonderful.
Very nice. Hey, well, the Canadians seem to go pretty well down the river there. Would you agree with that, Chris and Emily?
No, it was brilliant. It was an absolutely amazing trip, and the whole system seemed to work very well.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll have to try that out again. And just no, it was glorious. It was so beautiful in the gorge, and
Yes, the weather was pretty
Yeah,
kind to us, so
pretty kind.
it was
The
nice.
first rapid was made me feel a bit nervous because we shipped a lot of water. Well, actually, the
Well,
first
what-
rapids we just about we just had a massive wobble.
It was around the rock gardens, I think, yeah.
And then a couple of rapids later, we shipped a whole lot of water by just going straight through some waves. And I was like, oh, is this going to be like?
Every rapid will be emptying out. We only did one more after that. We actually took one more, yeah, it's just a glorious colour.
Meg's jacket blue. Thanks, Steve.
No worries, that's good.
Someone say something about Sam?
Oh yes, Sam was in the kayak there.
Who wants to be Sam? Pretend to be Sam.
Yes, we had Sam as a ring-in for the third kayak, which Annette couldn't make because she was sick with bronchitis. But yes, Sam made a can of dodgy fruit rice and gorgeous that he's put out of so his folks wanted to get him. And yes, the old tandem, which was in the bottom of the Canadian canoe, is I'm hoping not going to be too rusty after a couple of weeks once it irons out, but I'm sure it's had most treatment with that over its 20-year lifetime.
Nice.
Day 7 was the journey back from Oxford to Christchurch, which was reasonably straightforward. Left Oxford in good time and cycled the way across the plains, getting to Christchurch about lunchtime.